North Hempstead TV. I'm Town Clerk Leslie Gross, and you are really in for a special program this evening. We're here with Howard Kroplick, who's going to talk to us about the Vanderbilt Cup races and the Vanderbilt Motor Parkway. Now, are there parts of the Parkway that are left today? Are there any remnants that we could see if we were out in the community?
Yeah, well, to give you back up a little bit, in 1906, these races were still held on the public roads: Jericho Turnpike, Northern Boulevard, Lakeville Road. And then, unfortunately, in 1906, a spectator wandered onto the road on Jericho Turnpike and was hit by the car and was killed. And this was the first spectator who was injured and killed by the races. And this really upset Willie Kay. And as a result of this, he decided that no longer would a Vanderbilt Cup race be held on public roads. And therefore, he got together and they built and developed the Long Island Motor Parkway, which was the first road built specifically for automobiles. And this was going to be the place where they held the Vanderbilt Cup races, free of the public. It was going to be there's going to be concrete posts so that cars couldn't intersect. There were bridges built so the major intersections, the Long Island Motor Parkway would go over and under. Well, it turns out in 1908, when they first used the Motor Parkway for the Vanderbilt Cup races, 11 miles of the Motor Parkway was used, but they still couldn't complete the loop, and they ended up using 14 miles of public roads as well. But the Motor Parkway eventually was used again in the 1908, 1909, 1910 races, and then the Vanderbilt Cup races moved off Long Island. But the Motor Parkway continued as a road, ended up 48 miles when it was finally completed from Queens out to Lake Ronkonkoma. It ended in 1938. It closed down as the Northern State Parkway came on and was opened up. But today, to answer your question, yes, there are still parts of the Motor Parkway. You can't get rid of a concrete road, and there are parts of the Motor Parkway that still can be seen, and there's a whole bunch of us who still walk the Motor Parkway.
Well, there's one part you said that's right near Great Neck South High School.
Yeah, right in the backyard of the football fields of Great Neck South is the Motor Parkway, and many a student has used that road and not realized they are on a historic road.
It really is incredible that the things that are right in our own backyard, and we pass them all the time. So I'm hoping we'll be able to get out and take a look at some of these pieces of the Parkway, and then, you know, when people realize what it is, they'll become interested and take a walk there themselves. Well, you have some artwork also to your right.
Yes, this is a piece of artwork that was done by Peter Helk. And Peter Helk was a well-known artist who specialized in automobile racing. I think he saw the 1906 race and he was inspired. And this depicts the race in 1905 and showing the Dirac car, number 18, which won the race, going against the number 14 car, which is a Panhard car. And this is right here on Glen Cove Road, of all places, coming down the road, and shows the crowds watching the race here.
Well, Glen Cove Road doesn't look like that anymore.
No, Glen Cove Road doesn't look like that. I think my house is right over to the right.
Okay. And on your other side, there's a poster.
Yes, this was another really great collectible. This is a poster that gave information on the 1905 races. And this was hung on trees throughout Nassau County. And when I purchased this poster and I gave it to the people to renovate it, they were looking at this and said, "Oh, it's all dirty here. We're going to get rid of the mud." I said, "No, no, no. This is Vanderbilt Cup race mud. You got to leave that there." So this poster is in its actual condition here.
Now I see, how many hours was the race? It says between the hours of 5 a.m. and 12
3 p.m. Invariably, the race lasted about 4 to 5 hours, and it never, there wasn't one Vanderbilt Cup race that ever completed. Usually what happened after the first couple of finishers finished the race, the crowds would always say, "Well, we've been here 4 or 5 hours, we're going home." So they would always crowd onto the course, and invariably Willie Kay, who always acted as the referee for the Long Island
he didn't drive in the race.
He didn't drive in the race, even though he wanted to. He always wanted to pop into that car, his Mercedes, and drive around the course. he would always invariably have to stop the race because of the crowds that would go onto the course.
Well, it's amazing that many of these things have survived.
Yes.
And that you found them.
Yes.
Now you have ribbons here and...
Yes, here is, they always had different types of badges for the officials of the race, and this is one that was, which is in really excellent condition, that was used for the press, so they could go onto the course. This is one that I acquired on eBay on the 1906 race for a special officer of the race. This is one for the Motor Parkway Sweepstakes, which was the first race held on the Long Island Motor Parkway. This was held actually 2 weeks before the Vanderbilt Cup race in 1908. So this was the opening day of the Motor Parkway. These are different program guides for the different races. This is the 1905 race. Here's the 1908 race. There's also collectibles associated with the Long Island Motor Parkway itself. This is a bond to build the Long Island Motor Parkway. Vanderbilt and his associates acquired $2,000 worth of funding, and so this is the bond, one of the bonds that was given. $2 million. I'm sorry.
So $2 million. I was going to say that even with inflation, that would be very little.
Yes.
Did they raise all that through private funds?
Yeah, it was all private funds, and they eventually lost most of it, too. So it wasn't a winning proposition.
Well, I think that it won in the fact that people became interested in automobiles. They became interested in driving.
Yes.
Because before that there was the horse and buggy, and slowly they became interested in driving.
Yeah, and the Motor Parkway itself is historic because it was the first road built for automobiles in the country, and it also, the idea of bridges going in and over intersections was a novelty. The girders for it was a novelty. That they had landscaping along the road was pioneering.
Now, do they still have some of those bridges?
Some of the bridges, there's a couple of bridges that still exist. There's two in Nassau County. There's one in New High Park that still exists. There's one also in Bethpage State Park.
And what are they doing to preserve this?
There are efforts by different groups that are hoping to keep those bridges intact and to preserve as much as the Motor Parkway as well.
Well, I think you're preserving it just by telling people that it exists.
Yes.
What other kinds of things are people going to learn when they take a look at your book, besides the pictures and the history?
I think what's interesting about the book, besides the auto racing, is just looking at the pictures of the people, how the people dressed back then. They were very, very formal. You can't find a picture in there of a gentleman without wearing a derby or a hat. So when they came to these races, they dressed in their finest clothes. The other thing you'll see is what Long Island looked like 100 years ago, and it was the farmlands and the lack of traffic throughout. It's just amazing to look at.
I think that is incredible, again, when we're looking at the history of Town Hall being built just at that time. And Plandome Road was a dirt road. The trees were all over, and they really had to clear trees, which we try not to do today.
Right.
So this rich history that started right here on the island with families that we all know about, like the Vanderbilts, the Chryslers,
yes,
the people that were interested to form this organization.